right. Hello, everyone. Formally, this is the February 24th, 2021 editor group product design UX research sync meeting. And we missed one last time and we have some async notes to go back on, but I think we should just jump right into the agenda here. I wanted to highlight one issue that just came to my attention today that we'll pick up on a conversation that wasn't recorded that Michael, you, me, and Roman had yesterday about just kind of the future direction of the wiki. And this is building on a lot of like still kind of nebulous thoughts and what we could do to improve the wiki feature and the wiki part of our product while also kind of merging it with the direction of our rich text editor and static site editor strategies. It's all very hypothetical at this point, but I put a link to the issue in the agenda. And essentially it's like I think it was 3 or 4 years old. And it was created 4 years ago. It was on the wiki backlog and it's a fairly large backlog. I haven't gone through every issue, so it was not on my radar, but I was interested to read the feedback and the different customers who have indicated strong desire to have a merge request flow within the wiki, which previously had been kind of cited as like a benefit of the wiki. So you just start editing and you hit save and it's published and you don't have any kind of delay or build time or anything like that. Adding a merge request flow and potentially like a CI pipeline build and etc. like has been part of our potential future strategy, but one of the things I thought could hold back adoption of the feature. So it was just interesting to see that people actually wanted this and they're making some good points in the issue on why they would want it. So it's just food for thought. It was just one I wanted to call attention to because we're thinking a lot about kind of the intersection between wiki, knowledge base, static site, hosted on pages kind of experience within GitLab and the merge request as a backbone for that. You know, if we do end up either requiring merge requests or making it like our default and then you have to turn them off or something like that, maybe we'd actually make people happier and maybe the you know, the underlying mental model will be more aligned with our other repositories and standard feature sets. So I don't know, just something I came across today I thought I'd bring up.
I have a question about this thing. Where's the best place to like shoot out ideas around this where I would want it to be vetted by you before like I surface it out too much? Because I really like this idea, and like I have some thoughts about how this could work, and I bet you do too, because you probably read it more than I have. Where's the best place to like put some of these things? Because the issue itself, this one that you linked, the 4-year-old one, is like there's lots of external eyes on it, and I just want to like sense check stuff with you before I put stuff in there.
It's a good question. And I mentioned before we hit record that I was trying out Notion again. And actually, this was one of the things that I was trying to gather my thoughts around and kind of map out a little internal knowledge base for our potential knowledge base product. But like I guess my gut reaction would have been create a private issue and we can collaborate on that async, but that's probably against our transparency values. I don't think that there's any reason we can't be transparent about the fact that we're thinking about this. So maybe in the wiki epic, the wiki category strategy epic, we should just create an issue and say like, we're gonna see issues like that thread could get so long. I'm not sure an issue is the best format for it, although I think being transparent about it is fine. Why don't we just create an issue? that links to a Google Doc or something like that that's editable by everybody, and then we can just throw ideas in
I
there or
think
something.
I think the best one for me would be to add an issue to the wiki epic, but it's just like a one that lives as an exploration. So like
Mm-hmm.
just titling it off like that will help that. So
Yeah,
I think that's what I'm
yeah.
gonna do for that.
Let's just have an exploration around like a future of the wiki as a static site, and then we can link to a Google Doc. We can start in the description. We can link to relevant issues as we get closer to a proposal. Um, yeah, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, and I think it's time to start consolidating them and vetting them a little bit. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure the best format without committing to it, right? Like, well, I'm still not sure we're going to do this, so it's not like we want to write implementation issues or anything. Yeah. Anyway, I think an issue sounds good. And for context, Catherine and anybody else who's watching, this is all just related off of an ongoing conversation we've been having about the future of Wiki and how it relates and overlaps with the strategy that we had for Static Site Editor, what types of projects were going to benefit from the Static Site Editor, what makes them different from a wiki, and knowing now we're getting some hard data and we have to validate and make sure we're counting correctly, but we're getting a sense that the wiki is actually more widely used than we thought, and maybe we could invest in the future of wiki and sort of combine our strategies together to like have some knowledge-based type product that is a little more aligned to our tool set, in that it's based on like an actual repository with a pipeline and merge requests, and it's generated from static files using the static site generator. And then our rich text editor could be put on top of that, and we'd get very close to what our ultimate goal was for the static site editor, but also be able to maybe convert a large portion of the wiki users over to that product. So that's the general hypothesis, but it needs to be validated in so many ways before we move on.
It's really interesting though.
It's probably going to take the better part. Moving into the next question about priorities for the next few milestones, like, it's probably going to take a better part of this next quarter to figure out what this proposal even is and start like figuring out how we would validate it. Maybe talking to some users specifically about that approach and whether or not they'd use it. So that would be my meta priority, which is to have that figured out within the next quarter or so, whether or not it's worth pursuing. But I listed some of the other priorities that we have, or I have, over the next few milestones. The number one is working on the MVC for the rich text editor. So we are starting that in 13.10, and I hope in the next 3 milestones we'll have an MVC in the wiki. It might be behind a feature flag. It might not be fully, ready for production work, or it'll be limited in some way. But that's a major priority for us. I think that's a strategic initiative for the whole group, and we'll probably be moving as fast as we can on that. And similarly, we just finished working on changing the web IDE so it uses Editor Lite, which is the underlying code editor now, but for snippets, single file editor, and web IDE. So we want to continue to extend that implementation and start like adding extensions to Editor Lite that make all 3 of those categories better. So one example we had, I think, on the backlog would be like, or actually, I'll give an example that's not on the backlog because it's easier to wrap my head around. But an example that is possible now would be our security scanning features output a flat file. We could write an extension that takes that flat file and then decorates the lines of the code that are problematic from the security scan. So we could say, you know, the code quality report shows that this line or these lines are potential vulnerabilities, and badge them in the web IDE and in single file editor, with only having to do the work more or less once, you know, because we would extend the same editor to do that. So that's an example of what we could be doing. I don't think that one is going to happen this quarter, but it's extensions like that we would be working on. And then there's some performance and sort of reliability UX work on the web IDE that I want to see carried forward over the next quarter. I think that aligns with our quarterly goals as a company and our OKR. So we're just going to try and keep moving on that, making it a little more delightful and a little more streamlined. Specifically, we started looking at the simplification of the tabs in the web IDE, combining the review and changes tabs together into one, making it a little more straightforward when you're reviewing MRs and when you're making changes to multiple files. And the settings and nav priorities are the top menu. That nav bar, consolidating those three menus into one, and finding a really good, I don't know, just landing really well with that, and being able to measure the impact would be a huge priority of mine. I think the proposal that Michael's come up with is solid, and we're working on it in 13.10, laying the foundation. So that's probably the number one priority for me on settings and nav. And then the other ones, like the redesigning and reorganizing the left navigation to be a little more intuitive, and something that Michael was just noting in the agenda, and also is a hot topic, like reorganization of the idea for landing pages and whether or not there's a top level link, and consolidating the experience there is a huge priority. And just in general, improving the settings organization and picking I would say a priority is picking a direction between whether we have a single consolidated settings view versus contextual settings, like spread out throughout the left nav or within the product itself. I don't think we would be able to, in the next few milestones, completely implement whatever changes we would want to make there. But I do think Michael was just reviewing a proposal with us yesterday to just like take a little step towards that, and start figuring out whether moving settings in context with the features themselves in the left nav would be an improvement that we would want to make. So finding a way to iterate towards a decision there in the next few milestones is definitely a priority. Yeah. It's, when you got 9 priorities or whatever, you have too much work on your plate.
I know, right? I'm sure it's probably difficult to do a timeline for most of these, but I'm curious with the effort to combine the top nav menus. So I guess the work is beginning in 13.10. Do you have like an estimate of when it might like actually launch or be live in production?
I don't think we've got the full planning breakdown with like points, so I can't say for sure. I mean, I would love to see it by 14.0, but I don't know. It's going to be a fairly dramatic change to the experience, and I feel like we'll need to validate it a little bit first before we just flip the switch. I don't want to speak for the engineers and how hard it is, but I believe it's almost exclusively front end styling. Like we're not changing a ton of the functionality. So hopefully a couple milestones would be enough.
Yeah, because with that in mind, basically we'll have some time to kind of figure out how we want to measure success. And I think if there are any things that you're particularly interested in tracking, then you can like let me know. Like if you want to know, for example, how does it improve, does it make it easier to do something, or does it make users take less time to do something, or does it improve the discoverability of something? Like if we have a few metrics that we're particularly interested in, then we can design a study around that. I'm not sure what would be most useful to you or something that you want to share with leadership, but those are just some things that you can think about, and we can plan a study for it that could either occur before it launches or kind of like before and after. Over time, we kind of think about what the goals are there.
Definitely. And I think having a baseline is going to be important to measure improvement. I was kind of just thinking, right, at the very least, some of the research that Michael already completed in the validation of this, we would just rerun the same, tests and try and get a sense of whether, users were able to accomplish the tasks with more confidence or find things easier. I think it's anyway, yeah, we should come up with a little more concrete measurements and make sure we have a baseline and at least some existing research around it, and then measure it after it's done so that we can show that it was an improvement, or if not, roll it back.
Yeah, we do have some research on the existing experience, but probably doesn't cover the full scope of everything that we're changing with the consolidation. So we might want to do additional research to kind of cover the full scope of everything as a baseline. But we do have kind of like some tasks that users were completing related to adding a new group or looking for, what are some of the other actions there? Exploring projects or things like that. So we do have some data on their success rate, the time they were taking, things like that. But we could just make it more robust and official, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll give that a little more thought and put really our success criteria. I'll make sure that's captured in the Epic, and we can work on that together. Work on a script for testing, and then along the way we'll figure out what the level of effort is and when we'd be targeting this for completion, and then we'll take it from there.
Sounds good.
I'll go because my points are pretty quick, and I'll let Catherine finish off the show. But on my side, just to address some of the points that Eric's already been talking about, mine is all mostly around the left nav, and it's answering interaction questions around the left nav, like clicking on the titles and how they click on which page they land on, things like that. So that's been my focus for this week, and probably for the early next week as well. So I should land on some decisions there. And these decisions are interesting because it's not really so much something new we're introducing. It's more like just coming and aligning and making a decision on which direction we want to move forward with. So I'll link you all on it, and I don't think we need to solution validate them because they're already there in the world, but it might be good just to kick the tires, and perhaps and there might be some points in the direction that you feel like there's not enough confidence, and yeah, we can take that forward for solution validation if needed be. But yeah, that's on my side.
Sounds good. So then, yeah, and then on my side, I just put, I guess I'll go with my second point, that right now I'm currently in the phase of wrapping up the analysis of like the navigation design and information architecture of competitor and similar products. So I'll be creating an issue that kind of walks through the structures and the design patterns that I see in similar products. And then I'm also working on creating issues for recommended improvements. And so some of these will be broader explorations and probably follow-up research, while others might be more specific changes. Because basically, at a high level, what we learned from a lot of the benchmarking research and the SUS data and other survey data is kind of like some main points around one, managing the amount of information that's being shared with users. So like the overwhelming amount of items in the left sidebar, kind of figuring out where to go next, those sort of things around wayfinding. And then also the way that we're communicating and organizing the information. So making that clear to our users and make sure that it aligns with their mental models. And we saw the most problems with this with analytics, settings, and operations, I would say, in all the different tests. So some of them could be more tactical and more immediate improvements, and then others might be further exploration, mainly on the side of settings and analytics. So I just listed some things that I'm thinking about underneath my point, and I'll just kind of continue to flesh it out and create issues, and then probably put them in an epic. Or we have a couple epics floating around actually. That's making it a little bit tricky. I'll choose one of those epics and add the issues there. But you'll also notice that some of them have already been taken on by other groups. For example, the moving of Kubernetes, Terraform, and serverless into infrastructure, that has already been assigned to another group and is scheduled. So there are some things that probably will be owned by others, while other things we would continue to work on and plan. So that is an overview of where I'm at. I think, Michael, you may have had a point underneath that.
It's not a real point. It's more like a read-only point. Like I said, some of these things overlap with some of the work that I'm looking at. It actually makes a lot of my stuff easier. So yeah,
Okay.
this
Yeah,
works well.
I think we're going to have a lot of collaboration opportunities, because one thing that has been really challenging in even just some of the reviews of other sites that I've done so far is like the scope of the content that we have on GitLab. It makes it very difficult to balance not having too many menu items, but also not having really broad, vague categories. So that's something that I think I need to dig deeper into in terms of the competitor analysis, but also understanding how other touch points can help with this. Like, does the homepage alleviate some of that? The way we organize content on the homepage and where people go from there. And then there's kind of like a standard set of things in the left sidebar that people need to access more frequently. These are just some of the things I'm starting to think about. So that's why it's like very tricky and not super easy to cater to everyone. But
yeah. So I have a question about a high level thing. Do you know if activity was ever addressed of a new home currently it lives under project overview, but for me, that's like the last piece in that like grouping that I'm not really sure if it was ever discussed, if it has a separate home somewhere.
Yeah, so that's definitely an interesting one because I did a card sort, and honestly, the card sort almost led to more confusion because there was so much variation in how people were organizing the content. I was like, this right here is the problem. All the variations in their expectations, but the activity feed wasn't really strongly grouped with anything. So I definitely think it doesn't necessarily need to live under the project overview, but I'm not sure where else on that left side where it would live. It's like most associated with the project overview out of really all the other items, but it's still kind of its own almost standalone thing. It's a tricky one. But I'm wondering, and I left a comment, I think, on your issue that's around simplifying the navigation of the, what is it, the project overview details and the project name thing. On the group landing page, the group overview page, there's like a recent activities section where it kind of summarizes events from like the past 90 days or something. And I'm wondering if we might be able to do something similar, but potentially a different direction, where you summarize, where you highlight certain events from the project on that overview page, and then it links somewhere else. It links to the activity feed wherever we decide to move it. But that's what I'm thinking right now about that activity feed. It's a little tricky.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I'm not
It's
sure
interesting
where
we
the
have that at
page
the group
would live.
level. No, I think
Yeah,
the page would still live within the thing, but it's just like access point. So the access point is through clicking on the top, and then there could be a button on that widget. I'm just gonna call it a widget for now. That takes you to like the details activity page for that project. That could be one path. Yeah, it's worth exploring.
yeah, yeah. That's what came to mind today. The one on the group overview page is very, what's the word? I don't know, very high level, or perhaps not the events that would be most relevant in a project, but that's also something we could do validation around and explore what users kind of are wanting to see on a project overview page and a broader effort around improving that page. So I think there are some opportunities there. Another opportunity I think is potentially reimagining the way that we display the project files on that overview page. I don't know if it's potentially a collapsed section or something like that, but I feel like a lot of the real estate is going towards files right now. Well, in projects that have a lot of files. So that might be another thing to optimize. But yeah, those are the main thoughts right now. Some tricky things that I'm thinking about, but right now I want to just create issues about them so we can start having more discussions about it.
Cool. That's not a bad idea. I might create an issue to propose the widget thing because whatever team is in charge of the project overview will probably want to feedback on that one.
Yeah, and that is a good point. I don't know who is in charge of the project overview. I guess it could be whoever owns projects, which I believe is Plan right now, but things change often, so I might be wrong. But I'm pretty sure projects are owned by Plan. But I haven't seen like a specific owner for the overview page. Actually, it could potentially be Create. No, maybe it's Cross Stage. I don't know. I'm gonna stop guessing now. But yeah, it's a tricky one. because a lot of different groups are contributing content to that page, but I'm not sure if we have a dedicated owner at the moment. Okay, that is everything from me. I will pass it back to Eric if you have any other thoughts.
Not really. Thanks for the update. I think I'm excited to see the issues that come out of that. Some of them, as you mentioned, are already being tackled or scheduled by other teams, which I'm really excited to see. And yeah, whatever we can do to help. I think honestly, the iterative changes between what Michael's proposing and the issues that he listed with just cleaning up the UI and some of the patterns on the left nav, and just like the work you're researching and the other groups are already doing to kind of rearrange, that's going to make such a huge impact that I'm just really excited to see the outcomes there. And it doesn't seem like it'll be that disruptive to any one particular group, or you know, we're not really going to be gutting the whole thing and re-architecting it or something. So always happy to see that.
Yeah, because from what I saw in a lot of the card sorting data and tree testing data is that, as you might expect, or maybe not, things like merge requests, wiki, issue boards, they're easily findable. The names are strongly associated with the content and they work. We could have an optimal IA, but I also think for the sake of, you know, keeping things in place and where people expect to find them currently, it might be fine to just keep them the way they are. But we did see analytics, operations, and settings as kind of like hotspots where there was a lot more confusion and lower task success rates. So those are areas to do a lot more exploration, I would say.
Cool. Well, that's it for the agenda. I don't have anything additional. Michael, you have any other closing thoughts?
No additional points at this time.
Cool. Well, as always, great to see you both, and see you next week. Enjoy your
All right.
Fridays off.
Oh yes, you too. We'll see you next week.
Will do. Take care. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.